All right, what do you got? What do you got?
Damn! I came with like three things I wanted to talk about, but we have maybe actually this is a good watch actually. I think a lot of my university sort of students, or like students, I'm not a tutor. A lot of my university friends or people aspiring to be in film would want to listen to this. So you've obviously just had the success of Fatman that's got released. You went from burning your way up to $1 million budget films, which you may think people would think, oh, that's small, but that's actually a lot of money when you compare it to,
It feels like a lot. I mean, we our
yeah,
first feature film $1,500,
yeah.
so
That's what I'm planning
going
to
from
do next year.
100
Planning to
million is
invest, planning to invest some of my money into my own film, and you got to start somewhere because that's how you get that recognition. So, I just want to ask for like, you obviously it's Hollywood is the not sort of be all and end all, but that's the goal. That's my goal. That's a lot of
right.
people's goal.
One of the pinnacles of
Yeah,
filmmaking. And
that's the
okay, that's where
that's the pinnacle.
lots
That's
happen.
everyone wants to make it. Like I would, that's my dream to make it. I would love to like make it interact with people on social media, Twitter, give feedback. Like if you make it big, I want to make it big in terms of like giving back to people as well, not just being sitting high on my horse or like, oh, this is me. No, I want to continue to be myself. I want to interact with people. I want to make their day. I want to talk with people. I want to have fun. I want to have like fans interact. That's my approach to it. I want to make an enjoyable experience for everyone. But that's I think when you have like goals like that, I think it makes me want to strive more towards it. But
Yeah.
in terms of like aspiring sort of screen, because you, in terms of Fat Man, you wrote and directed it. So
Mhm.
I think that's a great starting point because people who tend to write sometimes like, oh, I want to find the director. But what like did you go into when you wrote Fat Man? Did you like me and Ash want to direct it as well?
Yes. And that's why it took us, 14 years to get it made, honestly, is because we never shopped it as a script for sale ever.
Yeah,
We shopped
exactly.
as for 14 years we shopped it as, hey, we're directing this, and then people would read it and say, okay, this is crazy. Like how, okay, what is the take? Like what is the genre? What is the tone of this?
See,
And so Ashman and I, when we first started in the business, we didn't quite understand it as well as we do now. And we would go
yeah,
in and would say, okay, what's the genre of this? Or what's the tone? And we would say, oh,
see,
it's like this, or it's like that, or you read it, it was
yeah.
funny here, and it was kind of action packed, and it was kind of a Western. And they were like, okay, this is a lot. Like what, what comps are there? And then it's like, okay, what movies is it like? And then you start naming like five different movies that are in five different genres, and they're already confused. So it's like,
But
okay, well,
what if you say it's nothing like any other movie? Isn't that good? Like, isn't that
it's
what
not.
it's?
It's not. Sadly, it's not
Yeah,
because they need something to
they need
associate it
something
with,
to go off.
put it in
Exactly.
a box to sell it.
Because
Because their whole when you're pitching a financier or a producer, they're literally like, how do? That's all they're thinking. How do I sell this? How do I
yeah,
sell this? And I
exactly.
remember
It's all
we
about
were,
the money
yeah,
for them.
it's it's you can say that you're just not going to help them at all. And what you
Yeah,
need to do is help them understand what it could be or should be.
yeah,
And obviously, the best way to do that is instead of going in and having to talk about it, is to be able to show something you've made and say, oh, hey, like. I mean, there's so many original filmmakers, right? Like, let's take like just Wes Anderson for an instance, and he did Bottle Rocket, and it's like when he went in to go shoot Rushmore, and they're like, well, what's the tone of this? You got this kid walking around in a suit, and he's got this, and he's like, what? He takes himself really seriously. Like, what's the
yeah,
tone of Rushmore? And he was able to point back at Bottle Rocket and go right there. It's kind of like a lovable idiot, know it all,
yeah,
who's obsessed with going to school. Like he
yeah.
loves this. He lives
So
for this. He never wants to leave school.
they have
And so,
they need that reference point, sort of like if you
right,
have past work or if you compare it to another film or sort of like this, they can see like what your vision is in terms of
you
like,
could
yeah,
you could luck out, right? You could make a short film. I mean, I remember when we first came to town and they were like, oh, you need something like this. And like when we were just talking to people and they showed us this short film called The Right Hook. And it was a filmmaker. I can't remember what he ended up doing. Comedies. He ended up doing like broad comedies, but
yeah,
and his short was a broad comedy and it was really funny. And it was about a guy going into a bar trying to hit on a
mm,
girl with his friends, and then he gets turned down and he gets into a fight with the chick like a fist fight with the woman because he
Yeah.
does such a poor job of trying to pick her up, and it's
Yeah.
really funny and really physical. And then they fall to the ground and they end up like kissing, and he gets a date out of it, right?
That's
And it's really funny though. It's really well done. And it sounds cheesy, but it was a great idea and it worked really well.
yeah.
And then he got a bunch of broad comedies off of that, like A-list broad comedies, because he did like a 10-minute short that was really well produced and it was really funny. And then like Adam Sandler hired him for something, or somebody like that, like
So
Rob Schneider
it
hired
can
him for
happen like
something.
that.
Yeah, in the early 2000s, he got hired for a bunch of stuff, and he did really well. And that was what he was interested in doing, was broad comedy. But it's different when you're like, okay, what's your stuff like? And you're like, oh, it's like these five amazing filmmakers, and they're like, okay, well, show me what you've done, and then you show them this $500 short that you shot that it doesn't have the energy or the Western aesthetic or the production value, because all you had was $500 and some student actors, and it's just doesn't quite hit what you want it to hit. And so you're like, okay, well, this is what I've got. And they're like, yeah, that doesn't really show me that you can work
Yeah.
with Mel Gibson. And you're like, fuck, it's like,
How do you
so we
work?
were, that's what we were running into, because we had our shorts.
So
It just wasn't doing enough for us.
so
And so we decided, we got to start making movies. So we raised $1,500, which was everything I was making at the restaurant I was waiting at and everything Esham was making at the movie theater he was working at in LA. And we went out and funded our own first film. And then that $1,500, we made a $1,500 feature film, and we went and got into a couple of film
yeah.
festivals with that. And then we came back, and like all of our friends that were working that I was working at Tony Roma's, which is like a rib house, and Escher was working at the movie with, they were just like, you made a movie and you got into a film festival? Holy shit, that's
Yeah.
incredible. Like, we want to do that. And they had all gone to film school. And we were like, all right, well, we didn't go to film school. We just went out and did it.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, how do we do it? And we were like, okay, well, here's how we did it. And then we all got together as like 5 or 6 of us
Yeah.
and made this other movie called Night of the Dog. And Night of the Dog was a $5,000 film, but the
So
5 of us all
funny.
took the cost of it. So everyone put $1,000 in. Everybody shot 20 minutes of it, and we cut it together like shortcuts. Everybody shot 20 minutes. We knew where it was going to end and where it was going to begin. And that's a great way to do it too, because then you've teamed up with 5 other filmmakers, and as long as it all kind of gels together in a certain way, it can be great. And that went out and won a bunch of film festivals for us. Like, we won a ton of film festivals with that one.
That's awesome.
It got the attention of like Focus Films, Miramax called, and that was a $5,000 feature film. The only problem with it was a $5,000 feature film with no stars in it. So when we went to go make our next thing, and that's what happened, we got all of our representation. We got agents and managers off a $5,000 film, and they said, "Oh yeah, you guys are making a $5 million movie next." So we started writing that $5 to $10 million movie that we wanted to do next, and then all the time had Fatman in our back pocket. We were
Yeah.
taking meetings,
Exactly.
but no one wanted us to do it because they were just like, I don't quite understand what this movie's going to be yet. And then we wrote for like 3 or 4 years, and we got into a ton of meetings. But nothing was getting made. And we just realized that like we're in this weird perpetual cycle of going to meeting after meeting after meeting for like 3 years and writing scripts. And we got better at writing. We got better at taking meetings. We knew a lot more people. And now it was time, we needed to go out and make something, because that was what had gotten us to where we were, like all of our representation and all the accolades at the film festivals. We were just like, fuck this. We got to go make something again. Tired of just writing. So we got back up. We took a script and we went and made something for $200,000, which was Lost on Purpose. And we cast it with every known actor that we could get our hands on. And it started with James Lafferty, who he's a star of One Tree Hill. And we were just friends with him because we were exchanging scripts and we shared a manager, and we were just admiring each other's writing at the time. And then we were like, he'd be really good in this Lost on Purpose movie as one of these guys. And we gave him the script and he agreed. He's from a small town. He got it. He's like, oh yeah, I'd love to do this with you guys. And from there we made 3 movies with that guy. And that movie got us the next movie. We went to a bunch of film. We won like 20 some odd B film festivals. We never got into a Sundance or anything like that, but all the sort of the tier just below Sundance we got into and won like a bunch of awards at those film festivals. That was huge.
That's still fantastic, because through that you build your recognition, and then
Right.
through the whole time, obviously you got Fatman in your pocket, and then obviously like sort of production companies would come in and say, we want these guys to write and direct something, or let's see what you
Not
got.
yet.
Oh,
Not
okay, not
yet.
yet, not yet.
On purpose. That was a $200,000 film. It was not like, a big Sundance sale. After you do the big Sundance sale, or you even get into Sundance, you have a shot at doing something like that. But being on that B festival circuit, it just kind of it was huge for us, and it got us our next movie in a weird way, in that a producer slash writer saw that film on the film circuit, and she said, "Hey, I have $500,000. How much did you shoot that film for?" Because it looked a lot. It looked like $1 million. The movie looked about like $1 million, and it was 200 grand. And we had Jane Kasmerick, and we had C. Thomas Howell. We had some names and faces in the movie, and she's like, "How did you do that for 200 grand?" And we were just like, "Well, we did this, this, and this." And she said, "Well, I have $500,000, and I have the rights to this book and a script that I wrote that's way too big. Can you guys look at it and just see if you can figure out how to get it down to $500,000?" So we read the book, we looked at the script, and we're like, "Okay, here's what we would do." And she said, "Okay, I want to do it." And we said, "Okay, well, here's our only stipulation. We'll write the script for free, but you have to promise us that in 3 months when we finish the script that we're making it. Like we're making
Yeah.
it." And she's like, "Okay, I promise we're gonna make it." And then in 3 months, we finished the script, we handed it in, and within 3 months after that, we had cast James Lafferty, Danny Glover, Dale Dickey, and we were off shooting it in Utah. So it was amazing. That was the fastest turnaround we've ever had of like writing something to get it
That's
and then
awesome.
making it. But we made that for about $500,000, and then after that movie, those producers were like, "Hey, like we really enjoyed that experience with you guys. Like, do you have any other scripts that you would want that we could shop, because we have some money people that are looking for something?" And we said, "Well, we've got these crime thrillers that we wrote," and we gave them Small Town Crime, because that was like the most doable one. It was like I think we could. We're like, I think we could do it for $2 or $3 million. We ended up getting like just under 1.9, but we ended up shooting that for 1.9. And again, calling on someone like Octavia Spencer, who was a friend of ours since
Wow.
2002, but
That's
she
awesome.
was not Spencer in 2002. She was struggling actress Octavia Spencer in 2002. And it wasn't until she got into a position after making The Help and winning an Oscar that she literally, read our script, loved it. We were friends with her, and she said, "Hey, I'm going to EP this, and I want to help you guys get this made. Like, who do you bring your lists? Come on over. Like, let's start talking about who's going to be the lead in this. And can I play like a cop or something?" And we're like, "Okay, I think we can do better than that. When we pitched her this idea of like her playing the sister, and like it would be really cool, this interracial dynamic, and she really thought that was funny and fun.
Yeah.
So we gave her our top list of actors, and we all decided John Hawkes was the guy to go after for that. And we went after him and got him. She wrote him a personal letter. We wrote him a letter,
That's great.
and he sat down with us and was like, "I love this. I'm into this. Let's do it." And then the rest of that cast, she helped us get a lot of that other cast. And then once we got 3 or 4 main cast members, it was like John Hawkes was like, "What do you think about Robert Forrester for this kind of old business guy?" We're all, "Dude, yes, that would be amazing." And he had worked with Robert Forrester like a year or two previous, and he was like, "Well, I know him. Like, let's go out to him and tell him, John's excited about working with him again." We're all, "Hell yeah!" So like all those little pieces like that came in, and we had an amazing supporting cast in Small Town Crime. And then after Small Town Crime, we were able to finally like go out with Fatman and go into these production offices. And when they said, "What is this like? I like the script. What is it like?" We were finally able to point back to Small Town Crime and say, "It's like that. It's like that. It has this Western undertone. It's a gritty thriller, but it also, has these dark comedic moments. It's very much a character piece. And it has this cool, fantastical element of Santa being one of your main characters." And they were like, "Oh, this could be a lot of fun." And it turned
Exactly.
into,
Finally.
"Yeah," instead of, "I don't know what this is." And then, yeah, and then it started the process of, "Okay, well, who do you want to play this role?" And we had seen Mel in Hacksaw Ridge, a Q&A
Fantastic. Oh,
previously.
that's
And then
fantastic.
we went after him. He liked the script, and then it kind of, after he liked it and came on board, it was pretty much, we were able to get the funding, and we were able to get, start to go out to some of the other cast members and cast it up. But that's pretty much how it came together. Everything, it was very much like a step ladder for us of like, and it started with a $1,500 film that Esham and I and my dad crewed, and we cast 5 people in it. It's a cast of like 5 people, and a crew of 3 people, me, my dad, and my brother. and my brother and I were either holding the boom mic or holding the camera while we were shooting it. And our dad lit the whole thing because he was a professional photographer for 20 years. And we were like, Dad, we need your help. Like, we don't even know what we're doing on the lighting side because we didn't go to school. We had no idea what, I
Exactly.
mean, we had worked with him you know, as far as like we're the backup camera for the wedding and shit like that. But like, we didn't, we had a very, you know, neophyte, you know, amount of education as far
Yeah.
as like how to light something properly in a cinematic universe. So he had an idea and he was like, all right, yeah, I think I can figure this out. So he literally went to Walmart because the whole thing is a shot in the woods, pretty much. And he went to Walmart and he bought two Coleman lanterns, a flashlight, and picked up one of his old bounce cards and he lit the whole thing with that. And we had a pretty significant amount that was at night, and all we did was light a fire, and then he bounced it with a flashlight. And that was our crew, those three people. And those five actors that we convinced them like, hey, let's get method and you guys should camp out and like really get to like get it. And they were down, they were excited. They're all in their 20s, excited to do it. They're like, yeah, we'll camp out for 7 days while we shoot the movie and this will be awesome. And it was. My mom made the food, and that was the whole crew, man. That was the whole thing. And we
That's
spent about
awesome.
15 on that thing. And we did all the post ourselves, and we learned a shitload about what it takes to put a movie together
That's awesome.
and what you should have to put a movie together. We got friends of ours that were musicians to just give us their music and even tailor some of the songs because they were excited to get something in a movie. And we were all just working together, man. And everybody was putting everything they had into it, you know?
Honestly, that is like true underdogs, not underdog story, but that is truly like a story of how you build your way up to the point you have
It
gotten
is,
now.
man.
Like
Like, we
because
literally did it
obviously,
with nothing.
obviously, some people in Hollywood like some of them may be fantastic writers, fantastic directors, fantastic producers, but sometimes some of them may be spoon fed or sort of handed the opportunity where like they know someone already in that position, so it helps them get it easier. Where this is like a true story where you've made your way from 500, 1500, then slowly more to that, slowly more, and
Yeah.
then finally to where you're at now, Fat Man. And who knows what's next? Like, obviously, people will look at this film. Some may have loved it, some may have not liked it, but that's everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But that's truly like
But you can't get caught up in that. You can't get
you
caught up
can't,
in,
of course, yeah. I was about to ask you how do you like
yeah.
look at sometimes like obviously with Fat Man now, like how do you look at like critic reception, like as a writer director? How do you respond to that? Because obviously I was looking at it before, and the film's sitting at like a 5.9 on IMDb and like 40 on Metacritic, and I'm just like, what the heck, man? Like, at least sometimes appreciate originality, or like it doesn't have to be a Star Wars like Marvel blockbuster. It doesn't have to be like I don't know if there's I don't know. I just like,
Well, I think as far as you were saying, how do you deal with critical response or even response in general? And I think, look, I mean, we knew what we were making. We were making a highly, you know, polarizing, divisive film that we were super excited about, and it's a movie where we take a conventional character like Santa. And I mean, I can't like you either love it or you hate it. You're either
yeah,
into it because it's something cool and new, or you're not into it because how could you do that to my Santa or my
yeah.
Christmas?
See, like,
You know, or you just reject the entire
yeah,
idea off the top because it's not hallmarky or schmaltzy or
yeah,
it's not warm and snuggly. It's kind of raw and in your face. And that's fine. That's fine if you don't like it or you can't handle it. And you got to be okay with that. Like we knew we were making something that was going to be tough to digest for a certain amount of people. And we hoped, you know, we knew there was that we loved it. We were excited about
yeah,
it. And we were passionate about it. So that's who we are leaning into. It's like you lean into the people who are excited and passionate about it, and you don't worry about the people who don't get it. It's just like if they don't get it, they're not gonna get it. You know, you're not gonna sit there and convince somebody that hey, this is fun and cool.
yeah,
Like you're only gonna be able to commiserate and connect with the people who actually connected with it. Like
yeah.
there's plenty of movies that I don't like that some people are like that
Exactly.
movie's fucking,
Fan-
and I'm like I can't fucking stand that movie.
it happens. Like a lot of people that like everyone's entitled to an opinion. That's what I love about film. I love discussing stuff with people. Like as soon as like for instance, once I worked at a theater as well, and we had one of the workers. We had a debate about Harry Potter versus Lord of the Rings, and I love both. But I'm a sucker for Lord of the Rings and a massive bias towards it, and I was just like slandering But like it just happens. That's what I love. I love the debate and stuff. For instance, I saw Fatman with my auntie. She came with me to the theater, the one I worked at, funnily enough, and she she didn't enjoy it that much. She came out. She goes, "Oh, that was boring. It wasn't funny." She told me exactly those words as they came out, and I tried sort of to convince her. I was like, "Oh, isn't like she thought, oh, it wasn't funny during the film." I'm like, "Isn't the whole premise of a grumpy old Santa driving a Ford Mel with a Mel Gibson Santa not funny enough to you?" Like I was just like, "Isn't that funny enough?" Like the movie doesn't need to be comedy throughout. And I was just like telling her that the premise is just funny and original in itself. Like when I first saw the factory of elves and the way they like ate and like sort of blending in with the military, I was just like laughing at the concept of it. Like the dialogue didn't need to be funny there. I was just laughing at the concept of it, and that's what I just yeah, I was just enjoying. I was just pleasantly surprised throughout.
Well, I mean, the way we like to work too is like we don't like to go for jokes. Like
Yeah, exactly.
if you find something funny, if you find something like I love when people start trying to compare it to Bad Santa, and we're like, we had no intention of going anywhere
Yeah,
near Bad Santa. The movie is nothing like Bad Santa. There's no reason to compare it to that movie. Um, but like we had no intention of even like that wasn't even in our peripheral of
yeah,
what we were making. When you asked me what I was making, I would say somewhere between Unbreakable and like a Sergio Leone Western.
yeah.
That's what we were making, you
I,
know? Um,
I,
so, and we were super excited to put Santa and all of his mythos and
yeah,
enchantment into the world and send a psychopathic killer after him, and try to ground all that, you know? That was what was the fun part about it for us.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I think when I look at like what the response is, you know, like there's a certain amount of critics that fucking can't stand it for certain reasons, you know, and there's a certain amount of critics that fucking love it for
Yeah.
exactly the same reasons, and it's the same thing with the audience. I mean, I think we've got like an 83 on Rotten Tomatoes right now with the audience
I don't
reviews.
I don't pay attention to that website anymore. Like I think,
Right.
in my
I
opinion, it lost its credibility a long time ago with certain stuff. Like, I remember I remember when Captain Marvel two, Captain Marvel, not Captain Marvel two, Captain Marvel came out, and I remember the audience score was significantly different to the critic score, and then the audience score was actually reviewed and then moderated, and then sort of like to fix it up a bit because they thought they were getting review bombed when they actually weren't,
sure.
and then even when they tried to adjust the audience score, it still ended up being like not that, like it still ended up dropping, but they I just don't like when things are tampered with like that. Obviously, it can get review bombed, but just let it be how it is. It will make
Yeah,
itself out in general. If it's getting review bombed, but then more people end up loving it, it's obviously going to take over the more like the disagreements. Like it's just
that's exactly how we approached it. I
yeah,
mean, look, when we came out on VOD, when we came out in theaters, it's a rough time to come out in theaters, and we knew we weren't going to do really any
yeah,
business there. And so when it came out in theaters, it did really well for what we were the constraints we were under here in the States. It did great. It had
yeah.
really high numbers. And then when for what was going on and how much promotion we put behind it, which was none. And then when we went into VOD, like we were number two, then number three, then number four, then top 10. I mean, those are in weeks. So like, you know, it was amazing that we stayed that high for such a little film. Going against, you know, like Let Him Go and like, I mean, big studio released movies. It's not hard. It's really hard to compete with those movies because they have a lot of awareness and they do a lot of spending. So you see it all over the place
Marketing,
and you
yeah,
go, it's like everybody's running it. Of course, I'm going to check that out. Everybody's talking about it.
yeah,
So we really had our trailer and the buzz that was happening online because of the trailer and the idea and the concept, and because we put Mel Gibson as Santa because that was such a rowdy kind of idea, you know. And like that was all our publicity really was. So it's cool that it hung so hard. And then last week, or I think this week, whatever the 13th was, yeah, a couple days ago, there was a big release of like the Redbox numbers, and we were number one on Redbox.
Oh,
So I mean,
congrats to
it's
that as well.
incredible.
Like
Like, I mean,
I see my Twitter timeline because obviously we follow each other, and my Twitter timeline is filled of your retweets of like people loving the film and appreciating it. Like, just interact and forget that. Like, obviously there's gonna be haters. There's gonna be people who not like the film. Like, even some films that are resoundingly like hated or like bashed by critics or in general, there's always like a small segment of people who love it, and if you love it, fair play to you, man. Like
Yeah.
I know there's a bunch of people, for instance, that bash on the Transformers films, or like,
Mhm.
oh, poor script, poor writing. But for instance, like, I enjoy them. I have fun with them. Like that,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't need to be written well. I just like kick back at home. I see big robots flippy do the flippy stuff and shoot stuff, and I just like I'm entertained. Like, I know it's not Oscar worthy. Like, but I still enjoy it. Like, it's just it's not like we were saying before. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's
Yeah,
just
and
yeah.
it's interesting because like I think we also were after something very different with the film. You know, we were trying to make a point. There's a commentary, you know, that sort of is flowing beneath the film. It's really funny. I read this review the other day, and they were saying this is the only film I've ever seen that's been like bashed for being woke and bashed for being too MAGA at the same time by people, which I thought was hysterical as well, because they're saying we're too right and we're too left. Like there's a lot of people like really like going after us for our political views, which we
Yeah.
kind of went down the center because that's how
I,
we are.
I didn't see any. I didn't see any like say whatever you want. I'm not going to bring politics into this. I'm not going to say my politics, but I didn't see any agenda swing to either side in your film. Like,
Exactly. Like
why does every film have to agenda swing nowadays? Like, there's too many films. Like, and if you look at them, like they might be highly critically appraised, but when you look at the audience scores, it's not what they want. Like, there's a lot of films that have gone too woke lately, or in terms of like certain characters, and it's not rubbed off well on the fans. And I think Star Wars had that same issue recently. Like, I'm a massive diehard Star Wars fan, and I've looked at the fandom, and there's certain character elements or decisions they made by going too woke have rubbed off bad of the fans, and now the culture or like the fan base is so divisive, and like it's really bad sometimes in terms of like just how much they disagree, and it's just polarizing. It's just a complete split between. But
yeah.
in your film, I didn't see any wokeness in it. Like, I don't know.
Well, the one thing that people say that we're trying to be woke with is our casting of
Honestly,
Marianne Baptiste as Mrs. Claus.
she was
But
fantastic. She was
that's
fantastic in the film.
we've done that with our last like three films,
Oh,
like
okay.
you know the Danny Glover and James Lafferty element, and then in Small Town Crime, it was Octavia Spencer and John Hawkes were like a sort of a
Yeah,
reverse Blindside kind of effect. You know,
yeah,
he joins the black family and fucks it all up, which we thought was funny, and so
yeah,
did Octavia. And then in this one, we thought it was really cool in a couple of different ways. Like if you cast, you know, if you subvert someone's expectations on just the casting of that character, whether it be Santa or Mrs. Claus or both, then when they come into that movie and the first 20 or 30 minutes, we're trying to get you into those characters. I'm not trying to
yeah.
get you into
No.
Santa. We spend 20 minutes getting you into Chris, the human
Oh,
being,
the kid.
and then we start slowly giving you the mythos, and you're like, holy
Yeah,
shit, this is already Santa, or
yeah,
oh, that's right, Santa. Like now I'm invested in the character and the person, and that's right, he's Santa. Like that's exactly how we want you to feel. And the same with Mrs. Claus. Like you're like, who is this woman? If he's Santa, who is this woman? Like,
absolutely.
that's his fucking wife. Like that's a
Absolutely,
that's
absolutely,
great.
I absolutely adored her as Mrs. Claus. She was fantastic. Like, she was so nurturing and loving. Like, this grumpy old Mel Gibson. Like, no matter what he did, she'd always like just try and calm him down. But it was just so great to see. I think she played Mrs. Claus fantastic.
And that's what we were after, and
Yeah,
that's why we cast her. She does such an amazing job of being,
yeah,
because it was a hard want. We
yeah,
needed somebody that could play somebody that had this like alpha, very assertive, like you could see this person kicking ass if need be, because the ending of the film is pretty aggressive in her department, and you have to be able to believe that.
mm,
You also have to be able to believe that she is the complete backbone for him and the operation. So she has to be a stern alpha
yeah,
badass, and she has to have this weird warmth,
yeah.
motherly feeling to her the entire
Oh,
time that you're like, yeah, she's so caring
the
and
motherly
love.
feeling, like she was too nice. Like, I couldn't see her ever getting like angry at him or anything. Like, no matter what he did, like it's always like the cookies, and
She's
he'd
all
always go, yeah,
compassionate,
yeah.
but she's also a fucking badass, which is
But
hard to pull, man.
it's just this. It's, I like those nice attributes to like neat attributes to the characters, and I like um that Santa Claus like knows everyone's sort of backstory. I kind of like that attribute. That's just another nice little touch to the film to add. It's just like at the end when Walton Goggins' character comes, but it's sort of teased throughout the film as well that obviously he knows the backstory to everyone. Where he had the person in the pub and he had a wife and children and he was flirting with the bartender, and then he had
Yeah.
when the two I think CIA guys came and interrogated him, or from the army when they were in the shed with the
Yeah.
reindeers.
Yeah.
He knew the back.
Yeah.
Like I like that attribute with knowing the backstory, and then obviously at the end of Walton Goggins, the encounter, and that was a neat little attribute to add. I don't know how that came across, or if you guys decided on
Well,
it, but
it was just diving into the mythos, right?
yeah,
It's like, okay, if he knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows when you've been naughty or nice.
he knows.
And then it was like, okay, how do we actually break that down and make it real? Because if he has 3 billion people in his head all the time, then he's going to be a schizophrenic. He's not even going to be able to function in
Yeah,
society. So how do we actually break that down and make it real? And it's like, oh, well, if he's standing right next to you and he looks at you, he probably gets a download of everything you are. It's not that he's holding your information in your head all the time,
he just yeah,
and knows what you're doing all the time. It's just when he thinks about you, like when he pulls up to your house and he's like, oh, I'm at Jeremy Johnson's house. Okay, he's asleep. He's been good this year. I've got a little present for him. And otherwise, he doesn't know what you're doing or what's
yeah,
going on. Because he is very human as well. He can't handle 3 billion things omnisciently happening in his
yeah.
head all the time. They're nuts.
Like you show that throughout the film as well. He's always stressed out. Like, and
Yeah,
if you're a bad child, you get a piece of coal. So,
exactly. I mean, that was a lot of the fun we had was really breaking down the myths of like how would that actually work, instead of just in some of the sort of the more goofy films they're it's just kind of like, oh yeah, he knows all this stuff and we're gonna pull a rabbit out of a hat when he needs to and it's
yeah,
gonna happen and he's gonna go through a wormhole and you're just like, okay, but you can't really, there's no reality there. So
yeah,
it's like, okay, what's the reality?